Okay guys, today we're going to be looking at different skin conditions, but first let's revise basic rash and lesions. We did this internal medicine maybe. So the macule is basically an macule, and then the second category is that we're going to stop, let's just categorize it real quick. So we have flat lesions, right? And then in flat lesions we have two options. One is macule and one is patch. So इसका सिर्फ difference ये है कि macule is less than 1 centimeter and patch is a bit bigger, like more than 1 centimeter. So like a macule would be like a freckle, ठीक है, and then a papule would be maybe a vitiligo का patch, ठीक है. So then we have black and so then let's talk about raised lesions. And then in raised lesions we have three options. The first is a papule, the second is a plaque, and then the third is a nodule. So let's just look at a papule. इसमें patch ज़िक्र नहीं है, but patch is just a bigger flat lesion. A papule, on the other hand, is a raised lesion. A plaque is also a raised lesion, and a nodule is also a raised lesion. But the difference is that this is also less than 1 centimeter. So an example of this would be like maybe a wart or a mole, जिसको नेविस भी कहते हैं. And then plaque is basically more than 1 centimeter, and it's usually when these papules they coalesce, they form this plaque. ठीक है. So an example of this would be psoriasis, and that is the most common example that we have. So then when we talk about nodules are solid. They're raised, of course, because they are raised lesions. And इसमें just difference ये है कि this is, even though this is also greater than 1 centimeter, but the difference between a plaque and a nodule is that nodules deeply infiltrate the layers of not only the epidermis but also the subdermis. ठीक है? Sorry, the dermis. Or the subdermis as well. So इसकी जो examples हैं, they could be nodule, could be lipoma, and fibromas like dermal fibromas, neurofibromas, ठीक है? Now let's look at the fluid filled lesions. So this is raised, and now let's look at fluids. So fluids में हमारे पास तीन हैं. We have a vesicle, and then the next thing is we have a bulla, and then we have a pustule. So how do we distinguish it? Vesicle is less than 1 centimeter, and it's like herpes, yeah, chickenpox, ठीक है? And then when we have a bulla, of course you can already figure out that that's more than 1 centimeter, and this is due to this is a large fluid-filled blister, and it can usually be due to, like, for example, a burn. Okay, and then pustules are basically, they could be either a vesicle or a bulla, so it's a specialized type of the two. So it can either be a vesicle or bulla. But इसकी खास जो बात है, इसमें pus filled होता है, because this is just fluid and this is also fluid, but this is pus, ठीक है? इसमें neutrophilic element भी होगा. So an example of this is acne, because acne में pus निकलती है, और impetigo जिसमें honey crusting है. So those are pustules. Okay, so now let's just look at other things. Wheal. So what is wheal? Wheal is basically transient edematous, and it's usually itchy. So ये usually hives या urticaria के साथ होता है. But the thing is, it's transient, so it'll happen and then it'll go away, right? And then when we look at cysts is basically, the way that this is different is that it can either be fluid filled or it's like sort of semi-solid consistency. So when it's semi-solid consistency, it also goes in the dermis and the subcutaneous. So this is sort of deeper. जैसे हमने कहा था ना कि a nodule is sort of deeper, but the thing is, a nodule does not have any fluid. A cyst does have fluid, and it's semi-solid, and so इसमें epidermoid cyst is an example of just this. And by the way, it's also encapsulated, so it's also encapsulated. Okay, फिर उसके बाद हम देख लेते हैं कि, like, you know, what is a crust? So crust is basically a scale, so it's like dried, ठीक है? And it's basically like a scab. Like, for example, in impetigo में भी crusting हो जाती है. And then we have like scales. So scales are not drawn here, but a scale is basically like it's a fragment of keratin. So why is this important to remember? Because it's fairly common in the form of dandruff, right? And psoriasis can also be scaling. Okay. So फिर उसके बाद हमारे पास crust मैंने आपको बता दिया है, and then ulceration. So what is an ulcer? This is when your epidermis is lost. So as you can see, the epidermis is lost. So that is just a feature of ulcers. And then part of the dermis is also lost. Okay, and this then its healing is with a scar. Okay, and then उसके बाद is a fissure. So basically what a fissure is these are like sort of like cracks. So like this can happen due to dryness. Okay? So these are just important terms to know. So one extra thing that isn't mentioned here is erosions, and erosion is basically, it's kind of like an abrasion. So it's like when you fall off like a bike or something, so it's the loss of superficial epidermis, right? And so there's no scar. Okay? So it can be due to an injury, and the second thing that it can be due to is after a rupture of a vesicle.